Hello everyone, welcome back. And this video is based on chapter 1, the problems, continuation of the budget line and the economics problem. And chapter 2, I will see how far I go with this with chapter 2, because if not vast, chapter 2 also involves some important concepts. So let's begin with the problems from chapter 1 that we are left with before we conclude our discussions on the economic fundamentals. So let's start with problem 1, which is more about marginal benefit and marginal cost concept that we went through in chapter 1 itself in the important concept section. So we did learn about scarcity, opportunity, costs, drawing an economic individual budget line, and an economist production possibilities frontier. We also summarized that all these is dependent on the concept of opportunity cost and how people respond to their economic incentives and are being rational. And every decision that a person is taking is being measured at the marginal benefits and cost intersection. So based on all these concepts, and especially that people are making the decisions, the timing of the decision and making the decision is very important and contingent upon the incremental benefits and costs, the following two problems are going to be very important and illustrious of all the concepts that we have covered so far. So potatoes cost Janice $1 per pound and she has $5. So that's her budget. And she feels, so the first pound of potatoes is worth $1.50. The second pound is worth $1.14, and the third pound is worth $1.05. And all the subsequent is just worth 30 cents. So given the complexity in the wording of the problem, we sometimes feel lost about what is worth to us. So worth really means what is the additional benefit she's getting from the bag of potatoes. Think about anything's value or worth to you. You're really talking about the incremental benefits from that. Otherwise, why will you purchase it? So just like that scenario, Janice is experiencing this much from the first pound of potatoes. And as we can see, from the last graph, marginal benefit is a declining concept. It's falling down, whereas costs are increasing concept. So this will be very important also in our economic theory. If Janice is actually experiencing the diminishing concept, which falls with theory, how many bags of potatoes should she optimally purchase, given that she has $5 to spend on those bags of potatoes? So our budget is given, as we had assumed in the fundamental concepts. And what happens if the budget changes? So think about it. If the first one is $1.50 and her marginal cost, I will call this the cost, or the marginal cost is just $1 per pound, she will get the first pound, right? And she will also get the second and the third pound of potatoes because of the same reasons. The marginal cost is $1, the marginal benefits are greater than $1. So she will continue with her 3 bags of potatoes because all the subsequent ones cost you $1, but the marginal benefits is only 30 cents. So she will stop at 3 bags of potatoes. Now consider if her budget was $2. Consider if her budget was $2. In that case, she had only $2 to spend. Janice will only get 2 pounds of potatoes because the first 2 pounds still give her higher incremental benefits compared to the incremental cost. So in this problem, in problem 1, marginal benefits is greater than equals marginal cost for 3 pounds of potatoes, right? And the moment she has less to spend, she gets only 2 pounds. So that's kind of an illustration of marginal benefit versus cost. The next problem that we are going to discuss will illustrate everything together with the budget line. So many of the concepts of the individual budget line. I will not go over this table. This is given in your solutions. But starting out with plotting the data in a budget line. You have $15 as your budget to purchase a lotto ticket at local 7-Eleven, decided to spend all the winnings on candy bars and bags of peanuts. You are spending $15 as your budget on candy bars and peanuts, and the price of candy bars is 75 cents, and the price of peanuts is $1.50. So all this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. I always, when we do budget problems, I always tend to write down the information. Budget, problem 2. Budget equals $15. Price of candy bars equals 0.75. Price of a bag of peanuts equals 1.50. Double the price. So this is the information given to us. Based on these, the first question that is being asked is to plot the budget line. And we've gone over these in our last section. We know that we just have to assume, what if you spend all the resource or all your money on just a bag of peanut or bag of candy bar? So if you are spending on candy bars, 15 divided by 0.75, that's 0.75, that's 20 candy bars, and 15 divided by 1.50, that's 10 bags of peanuts. So 20, if I put candy bars on the vertical axis, then I will put 20 in here. So let's draw this. And then the rest of the questions will fall into place automatically once we draw the budget line, as we saw in the last section. So here I will put candy bars on this axis. So I'll put 20 out there and 10 bags of peanuts out here. Candy bars. I'm putting the abbreviated form, ladies and gentlemen, candy bars and peanut bags. So here, just for clarity, I will say, well, this is 10 and this is 20. So as you can see, the slope here, because I put candy bar on the vertical axis, slope is going to be 2. That's given by 20 divided by 10. You can say that, but more importantly, it's also the prices, the price ratio. Slope equals 2 here, given by the price of peanut bags, which is on the horizontal axis, divided by the price of the candy bars. Okay? The price ratio also gives us the slope. But if I had drawn candy bars here, the slope would have been 1/2. So in that case, the next questions are dealing with opportunity cost, which are readily identifiable once we know the slopes. What is the opportunity cost of one more candy bar, of one more bag of peanuts? One thing about number D, the opportunity costs are going to remain constant no matter whether you are changing candy bars or peanuts. Okay. So let's go back to the whiteboard and figure out the opportunity costs, which will be very similar to the slopes. The opportunity cost is, if you give up, value the next best alternative. If you give up peanut bags, how much you get in candy bars? So if you give up 10 peanut bags, you are getting 20 candy bars. Remember, I didn't plot the extra points here. I can just go by this formula. So if you give up, if you want 20 candy bars, you give up 1 bag, 10 bags of peanut. Sorry, 10 bags of peanut. So if you want, so in terms of 1, we usually define opportunity cost, 1 incremental unit, 1 candy bar. You will have to give up 2 bags of peanuts. So opportunity cost of candy, of peanuts, of a bag of, want to give up one candy, if you want one candy bar, of a candy bar, sorry, because this is what we're trying to figure out, is 2 bags of peanut. So it seems the opportunity cost is high, you're giving up 2 bags of peanuts, and opportunity cost will be the opposite. If you want 1 bag of peanut, you give half a candy bar, something like that. It is actually the opposite, I think. If you want 20 candy bars, you give up 10 bags of peanuts. So if you want 1, you give up half a bag of peanut. Actually, opportunity cost is lower here. Okay, so what you give up is low. And so it will be 2 if you give up 1 bag of peanut, it will be 2 candy bars. So really, it seems it's expensive to get that bag of peanut. You're giving up more. So opportunity cost problem and these budget line problems will be in your chapter 1. You will do some on your connect assignments. So go over these problems carefully. Basically, the slope is one way of looking at the opportunity cost, but you also have to understand like the way I kind of, did this problem, I illustrated them, this problem, particularly in terms of how much you give up. So you understand the value of the best alternative, okay? So that's how opportunity cost is defined. Does the budget line tell you which of the available combinations of candy bars and bags of peanuts to buy? No, it's only telling me that these are available. The budget line never gives us information on that. And this is a very important point about budget line, which it just gives you that slope and the line itself. It never tells you the optimal combination. For that, we have to wait a little bit in our lecture to come to that point in our microeconomics course. Now you increase the budget line, so available number of candy bars and peanut bags will also have increased. So once you increase the budget, this has to increase, okay? So going back to these questions over here, budget line does not provide information on how many to buy. Gives us information about opportunity cost though. And if budget increases, we purchase more. Okay. Now, so how can the economy also illustrate the same concept? Is there ways it can attain more or something, not just simply saying that our money income has increased? There are ways the economy can do more. One of the things is the time-tested concept of economic growth. Many of you probably heard about it. Growth in China versus United States. Chinese growth has always been better. Improve resource quality and technological advance. Now, when I say growth means more resources or improved quality or technology, that might vary from country to country. I just mentioned the Chinese growth has been higher than the United States and many other advanced nations for quite some time. That's because advanced nations have already attained their economic growth. So these countries, the growing economies like China, Russia, India, etc., they are going over that phase where they can improve on their growth factor based on these points. Resource quality, technological advance, more resources, more human capital, for example, to spend on your production possibilities frontier and move the frontier out. So this is the same frontier we saw in the last example, except we can push this frontier out and go to the unattainable position by having economic growth. This is what China is doing rampantly all across its industries. So if you think about US and China, China is more like the going for the future then United States is more for the present, and it has already attained its growth curve. It's kind of like this. Other ways to attain this growth and move the production possibilities frontier, not just having technology and resource quality. I said that we can always relax those basic assumptions. What did you start off with? Full employment, resource quality is same, technology is same, etc., etc. We can always relax those, and with more better technology and better productive resource quality, we can always gain higher growth. Back in the 70s or something, or I think it's the 70s, the Latin American countries were seeing tremendous amount of growth, basically by increasing their manufactured production and also by doing something which is called international trade. This is something I will take up again in chapter 2, specialization, comparative advantage, and international trade. Latin American economies were growing and manufacturing and producing that to other countries, exporting it. So any country with lower opportunity cost of production and lower costs of production, just export it to the other country with higher costs of production and gain more resources, more production, more resources, and expand their production possibilities frontier. What were the Asian tigers doing in 1997? The Asian tigers, a group of countries in Southeast Asia. If you follow the economic history of the Asian tigers, right from the 90s and the mid-90s, due to some currency devaluation, they had huge export gains. They were just growing like anything. Production possibilities frontier grew for the Asian economies. Okay, increased production possibilities. The Chinese case. Okay, enables each nation to enhance its production possibilities and achieve greater output. Population explosion in China. Okay, the need of more manufacturing facilities, because China always exports a lot of manufactured goods to United States and other countries. So that pushes the Chinese production possibilities curve to the right. So to summarize, it could be international trade, it could be you having more improved technology, you having more resources, or just by having increased output capacity, just like in Chinese case, that you can shift your production possibilities to the right. Okay, so that concludes our chapter number 1. That's the basic fundamental microeconomics, substantially long chapter, but going over the concepts and how we use it for an individual budget and for the economy's budget. So what I will do is I will move on to chapter 2 after closing this off. After closing this off, got chapter 2. So I will try to cover as much as chapter 2 as possible and see if we can also cover one of the most important aspects of this one. So let me give you a brief overview of the chapter first before I even share the screen. Chapter 2 deals with what we just learned in chapter 1, takes the concepts and puts it in an economic framework, like framework of how the countries are using these concepts, and there are different kinds of economics. And then we go to a market-based system and talk just about the circular flow in a market-based system. Okay, so we talk about certain economic systems here, starting with pure capitalism, command system, and market-based system, and then the characteristics of the market system and talking about the circular flow itself. So when we talk about economic systems, the things are a little bit different from just talking about the economy in general or the individual by yourself or the microeconomic person. What we talk about economic systems is mostly about how they are run, how their decision-making activities coordinating, what is the method that really coordinates that economic decision-making. Just to give you an example of what we just covered right now, an economy like China, it's growing and it's kind of shifting its production possibilities frontier to the right because there are opportunities of producing more for other countries, it's using more resources, shifting its people. But how does it do it is a different ballgame altogether, because China uses a kind of system, has been using for a long time, which is more command and control. And over time, it is trying to signal some market mechanisms. So this how factors into what it is doing. So we must know this method of how economic systems are working to understand how their economies are growing. So that's the perspective of this chapter. Who owns the factors of production and how they're coordinating the business? There are two opposite extremes. The pure capitalism, the French was laissez-faire, talks about minimal government intervention apart from protecting one's private right. They are the free market proponents. There are not much typical example. The closest examples we can think are Hong Kong and probably the erstwhile Hong Kong, not the one that has been now controlled by China, but maybe Hong Kong, the previous Hong Kong, and Australia, economies like these where government intervention has always been minimal. But as of now, it's very, very difficult to come across purely capitalistic system where they are actually enforcing property rights to only ensure contracts and legal contracts and government property rights like legal enforcement mechanism like police and all these. And there is no other role of the government. This kind of system is probably not much seen now. The other extreme is the China kind of system I'm talking about. I have several examples. Russia and China also can be included in here. Typical government ownership of all resources. Everything is done centrally by the government. All the coordination of resources and output produced also decided centrally. So China is also in this example. What I will do, I'll stop this share and see if I can bring this once back. I think I will start putting these examples here. And given the war, the Russian example has become very prominent. Although I put a note of interrogation here, because ladies and gentlemen, China over time has started doing more of a capitalist kind of, market-based kind of system, which is kind of strange to me, but given their their work system is very, very commands and control based. I'll go over to my last set of slides. And then the market system comes into effect. So because these two extremes exist, the market system is a mix of people, or mixed economy. You have like 10 to 20% government intervention, depending on which country you live. These are some of the typical examples. I put Australia in this example because Australia over time has come out of these. Most of the Western economies and Hong Kong and some of the Southeast Asian economies follow this rule. Taiwan and all these economies, South Korea, there is always a very good free competitive market force that is working. Buyers and sellers signal the market price, etc., etc. The good part about market, and there are lots of good parts we are going to cover, the most important parts is how decision making being coordinated by market activity, it gives powerful economic incentives to generate profits and to generate more output for the economy, make more revenue, make the consumers happy, and we'll go over several characteristics of market system towards the end of this course. But it just makes us feel like working with macroeconomics because we are going to work with market-based system. Market-based system, we should not be calling them as capitalism, but mostly mixed economy. They are different from the pure capitalistic system. So having said that the market system works best, let's see what characteristics make it so very agreeable to us. Private property, freedom of enterprise and choice, self-interest, competition, markets and prices, technology, specialization, active but limited government, use of money. Excuse me. I'm going to cover some of the salient points here. So for example, what do we mean by private property? We said in pure capitalism, they also have private property rights. But markets is going a step farther. If you have private property rights, you can develop intellectual property rights from there. And you can make government profits from there. As something that the very big organizations are always doing. The scientific research and development units are always providing competitive forces to work and providing lots of economic incentives to their scientists and researchers to develop products by giving them hefty bonuses and stuff. They are always getting the incentive to have products which are new in the market, and you sell those products, get patent for those products, and you make further profits. So this is just one example of how you are creating more from your private property rights. You are encouraging investment, innovation, and maintenance of property. It creates value in a society. It does not just limit you to government-owned property rights, right, like in a centrally based command system. So it's very important, though, to remember that if you have private property rights, there is a legal enforcement mechanism, like we discussed in pure capitalism, that are in place to take care of your private property. So anyone stealing from your property or anyone just taking your copyright is not acceptable. You have the freedom of enterprise and choice. I don't have to explain that to you. Freedom exists in all forms, in all markets. But very important, though, because from this freedom of enterprise and choice comes the business freedom to do anything for you and your freedom also. Which brings us to the next point, self-interested behavior. I promised you I'll talk about these at length in this chapter. Self-interested behavior really creates value in competitive markets. When you have that economic incentive that is motivating you to work and purchase a product from the market, giving your right price, that the price and the product being sold in the market is creating more incentives to create more products. Give me one. So consumers are acting in their self-interest and producers are providing the product also in their self-interest. But those two are interacting, ladies and gentlemen, to provide the social, mutual, interested goal of competition and fair markets. Okay, this is how businesses survive in market system, and we all know, we may have heard that very free market system, if not pure capitalistic based, but very free economies like Australia or erstwhile Hong Kong, they had very few obstacles to create businesses and run the corporations very well. This self-interested property guides it. And so there is no lack of competition. Competition always helps you coming to the mutually agreeable goal. As I've been talking about in the previous few slides, it's always about competition to pay the best price, and one seller trying to get the markets. They always offer you the better price. So just a small example of what happens during the Black Friday. That's pure competition. Sellers trying to get the attention of the consumers. And even during every holiday, you see these products. That's just an illustration, ladies and gentlemen, of a market-based system. If you ever think about a command and control system, I think none of you lived there, but I have friends who lived there, and their experience is everything is being controlled by the government. There is no free experience where the market is bringing together buyers and sellers to generate the price and the maximum satisfaction for everyone. Okay, so one thing about competition also, it minimizes economic power concentration. Competition is designed to have more better prices and choices in the market rather than creating a monopolistic power. And trust me, monopolies exist in the United States and other market-based systems, but we want to carve their power from the competitive point of view. Then, the other salient point I wanted to discuss in a market-based system is specialization and division of labor. Specialization means everyone is just working with their expert. You just learn your skills by doing, which saves time. You're an expert. Society or the economy takes the advantage of the differences in your capability. And that's how you should produce in a market-based system. Just as a geographic specialization example here, all these states could have just sufficed and stayed in the United States as part of the federal government and always been under some rules of the state government and the federal government. No, in a market-based system, everyone is earning money. Everyone is freely exchanging their commodities through even state-based trade, not international trade. So there is a comparative advantage for Nebraska in producing potatoes, the Great Plains region, the weather, etc. The cost of producing potatoes, in Idaho, cost of producing potatoes is much lower. That Idaho, that plains, that mountain and the little valley that Idaho is composed of, those kind of places are very conducive to growing potatoes. Whereas Nebraska is big in wheat, the Great Plains region of Nebraska. So Idaho and Nebraska can trade with each other. Same with Florida. Florida, the coastal region, and all the cheap labor it gets sometimes helps in procuring citrus kind of fruits like oranges. Fruits are famous, plenty in Florida. So Florida should export fruits to other states and get the surplus of the other products from either Nebraska or Idaho. As you can see, the arrows flowing in. So whatever is happening in a market-based system, it's happening in a very peaceful and coordinated manner. You have a comparative advantage in producing something which the other states probably can produce. So Idaho and Nebraska can still grow oranges, but they do not want to. The cost would be higher. Why not just get it from Florida and vice versa? Okay, so here comes a very important concept in the market system called theory of comparative advantage, specialization, and trade. Comparative advantage. Excuse me. Oops, typos. Refers to producing a product at a lower opportunity cost than others. So that's the thing Florida is doing. That's the thing Idaho is doing. Potatoes are cheaper to produce in Idaho. Why produce wheat there, grow more potatoes and export to other countries? And in this process, other states or other countries, this process earn more revenue. So based on comparative advantage, regions can engage in specialization in products and trading with other regions. I specifically mentioned region. It can be state level, country level. We talked about country level trade in the last chapter. So this is specifically state level we are seeing. So moving on, the last thing about markets that we should remember is the active and limited government. Limited government should always be there. As I said, varies between 10 to 20%. For many economies, government always rectifies some of the market failures and improve the effectiveness of the market system. What we mean by failures, think about the environmental regulations. Some of these are designed to reduce too much of externalities coming from pollution and all these. Keep in mind that we think that economic growth can be achieved with less regulations, but sometimes these regulations help clean up our cities, our lakes, our rivers, clean up the pollution, which probably have provided more economic incentives for cities to provide tax breaks and attract businesses, etc., etc. So controlling the pollution, which is a market failure, which markets have not done properly because markets are designed to take care of products, something that the government have come up with regulations with, has actually helped reinvent the market goals, provide better cities, better amenities, and better businesses, kind of like that. So think about some of the ways government can also help. Government also has certain regulations designed to improve the effectiveness of the market, like the minimum wage law, which we're going to discuss in the next chapter, chapter 3, agriculture subsidies, etc. We're probably going to go over a lot of government intervention in market systems in the next chapter. So that completes the theory of markets and how markets promote international trade, etc., specialization trade, etc. So the three fundamental questions for economics are then these. What goods are producers, how will they, and who will get? The market system that we talked about and the other economic systems are all answering these questions. So for example, the command and control system, one extreme form of economic system, the goods and services are all based on central location, and the central coordinated body guides the reallocation of goods and services. And what will be produced and who will get are also guided by the decision making of the central planning body. But whatever you do, you always face again those two economic questions, trade-off and opportunity cost. So in a market-based system, these opportunity costs and trade-off are well defined. In a command and control system, they are not so much. How will they be produced? This is the simplest question that you're asking. Probably, again, depends what kind of system there is. In a market-based system, see, then the second example, manufacturing labor cost is high. You just outsource your location to other countries, and outsourcing has moved many Western countries' locations to cheaper employment available in developing countries, which are more productive businesses, more attractive businesses for the Western nations. But then there are the ethical questions related to that. We are not getting into that. But that just shows the different economic systems produce goods in different ways. Command and control system, they always used to be within their bloc. The Soviet bloc of countries always used to trade within each other. They did not want to go farther. Not much. Who will receive is a distributional question that also kind of depends on what kind of economic system is there. Optimal allocation, we have gone over that. And then Adam Smith, the proponent of market system, his Wealth of Nations book, written in 1776, kind of talks about all of these efficiency, incentives, freedom of enterprise and choice. He was the father of economics. He's the father of economics, and he kind of brought up the market system to the forefront of economics. And these are some reasons why we should always think about market systems and economic systems, because we have seen the demise of the Soviet socialist system. And a large part of this demise, a large part of the reason for this demise is the coordination and the problem, incentive problem. Markets provide both. The coordination, if the central body is doing everything, you do have bureaucratic problems. And some areas of the system will receive more, some will receive less, and vice versa. So you always end up having some kind of failures in coordinating the system, okay? And then there is no economic incentive. So for example, in a market system, if you don't find your seller, you can go to Amazon and look for other sellers, let's say. So in a central command system, if a government is kind of promising you that they are going to provide everything for you, if there's a surplus or a shortage, the government cannot provide to you immediately. And there's no resulting price coordination going on. If we opt for Amazon, we can pay better or cheaper prices, or better prices or efficient prices. We do not know. But this command and control system will not lead to such economic incentives. As a result, ladies and gentlemen, your actions do not provide any further motive, and such kind of systems are designed to collapse. Anyways, with this, I stop this video and we'll go on to chapter 3. But before that, there is a particular portion of this economic system dealing with markets, the circular flow of the markets, that we will discuss in the next video, and then start off with chapter 3. So I'll stop here and we will continue with the circular flow system of markets in the next video, along with chapter 3, the demand and supply literature.